Hello guys, my name is Natasha Hernandez and today I'm going to be presenting you learning to read like a writer and write like a writer. So, what is reading like a writer? So, to put it in simple terms, reading like a writer is just understanding what you're reading. It took me the whole semester to learn the definition of what reading like a writer is and understand it, but I'm going to give you an example. Say you have a book, right? You're opening to read it. When you're reading the book, don't just read it to pass the time, or don't just read it to look studious in front of another person. Read the book and understand what the author is saying. And understand basically means to question the decisions of the author. Why did he or she write this? What is the purpose for him or she writing this? How did this affect the message that he or she is trying to convey? Questions like those is what makes the difference between reading and reading like a writer. So, how did I learn this? I learned this by three main ways. The first one is actually with the reading modules that Professor Martinez gave us. And the one that struck me the most was one that was called Writing is a Soul and Rhetorical Activity. And it's by Kevin Rosen. And what the peer review source or journal said basically was just that when you're reading like a writer, or to read like a writer, you need to identify the devices that the author is using and how did he implement them in his or her writing. So you are reading to learn about the writing of the author. You're reading to get to know the author's opinion, bias, address towards the topic, and then try to identify the devices that he or she used and why they used what they used. I don't know if that makes sense. The second point is annotation. So annotation is very important when it comes to reading like a writer, because when you're annotating, it's a comment of your thoughts about what the author is trying to convey. So it's like a collaboration between you and the author. It's just sort of what you understand from what the author is trying to say. And that helps because it means that the author is doing a good job on addressing what they want to address. Whether you have good or bad comments about what the author is writing, it's a collaboration. It's a conversation that's going on between you and the author of the book. And then the third point is literary devices, genre, and mode of communication. So for this one, I go back to the first one. You need to identify the devices, the genre, the mode of communication that the author is using in order to be able to understand what the author is writing. So how will this help me? This is going to help me because it's going to improve my writing. It's going to help me understand or just sort of kind of like inspire my writing based on all the authors that I've read, because it's going to give me an idea of, oh, I should add this, or oh, I shouldn't add this, because what I'm trying to say is gonna fit best to this or is gonna not fit best to this. Secondly, it's gonna increase my analytical skills. It's gonna increase my analytical skills because when you're reading like a writer, you have to analyze the text and identify these devices. So if you can't identify them and if you can't analyze them, you're not reading like a writer. And then the third one is improve my decision makings. It's going to improve my decision makings because, like I said, when I'm reading from an author, I question, why did the author add this, or why did the author not add this? And then that's going to show me, okay, I'm trying to address an audience. I'm going to do what the author did, or I'm going to not do what the author did. And that's just going to improve the decision makings over time. Next, moving on to the second topic, is what is writing like a writer? And this one was a little bit more difficult for me to put in simple terms, but basically, writing like a writer is a process. It's a cycle and process that you have to understand is very complicated because writing is an art. And as we know from English 1301, art is complicated. It's a complex thing. So essentially, writing like a writer is applying what you read and understood to your writing. And I'm going to go a little bit more on a tangent as to what that sentence actually means. Writing like a writer means that you're writing for a reason. You're writing to address an audience. And you have to understand why you're writing or why you're applying a certain thing. And so that's essentially what writing like a writer is. So how did I learn this? I learned this by understanding the difference between revision and editing. First, revision is when you fix a whole paragraph. So for example, I'm writing my essay, and then I'm reading the paragraph that I just wrote, and I say, no, you know what? Let's scrap this because it's not conveying what I wanted to convey. Let's take it off because people can think or can interpret this in a different way. That's what revision is. And then editing, as we know from Professor Martinez, it's going line by line and just looking at the grammar and nothing more. So why is it important to know the difference between revision and editing? It's important to know because when writing like a writer, you have to be able to, like I said, identify the devices. It connects a lot with reading like a writer. Identify the devices and then just understand why you're implementing the devices into your writing. The second bullet point is taking feedback into consideration. It's important to take feedback into consideration when writing like a writer because when you're addressing an audience, you have to understand that this audience, they're all going to have different opinions towards something that you're saying. And you have to be ethical when you're writing. So if, whether it be family, friends, or peers, they're reading what you wrote and they give you feedback, you have to take their feedback into consideration and say, well, you know what, I agree with this, let me fix this. Or, you know what, I don't agree with this, let me not fix it. That is what writing like a writer is, taking feedback into consideration. Then the third bullet point is attempts and rough drafts are a must. Like I said, you have to understand that writing it's a cycle. You are not gonna get the perfect essay in the first try. It's impossible. It's never happened. It's never gonna happen. You're always gonna have the rough draft, the first rough draft, the second rough draft, the third rough draft, until you reach what's perfect for you, because it's still not going to be perfect because humans are made to make mistakes. That's just the way we are made. You cannot fix this. Sorry to the perfectionists, me included. You can't write something perfect. It's always going to be not perfect in someone else's view. But you have to understand that rough drafts are a must, and you have to go through this process and cycle. And then the last one, and I think the most important one for me, is writing is changes. That sounds grammatically wrong, but writing is changes. This essentially means that when you're writing, you have to understand that it's going to change based on your experiences, because that's what writing is. Writing is addressing an audience with your experiences. So your writing is going to change as you grow or as you're building memories, as you're seeing things. It's going to keep on changing. And it's important to know that you're going to have to make changes to your writing eventually. Like, it's never going to stay as one single piece of art. It's going to continue to go on changing. And how will this help me? So having the practice and knowledge of writing like a writer is going to create an author that can, 1, address the audience correctly, and 2, speak with experience. So first, address the audience. What do I mean with addressing the audience? So, writing, like I said, you're writing for a purpose. You're writing to convey a message or to give the information that you found about the research of a topic, or to just rant if you want. But there's always an audience. So writing is addressing the audience correctly. And you have to sort of understand that writing is the intent to address the need of an audience. That's what it is. That's why you're writing. And in working to address this matter, you have to write about your experiences. And both of them interlap and connect a lot. You cannot write without adding your experiences into it. You have to add some sort of knowledge into it. And it's going to help you be able to just develop ideas more clearly and speak using your experience. And I know the presentation is sort of long, but this is me trying to summarize it and shorten it. But thank you so much for listening to my rant about what I learned in English 1301. And honestly, it's one of the best courses that I've ever taken because it's opened my mind about writing and reading. It's given me a different perspective of what these two things are and how they're an art. Thank you once again.